I have looked and looked and looked again, but I still can't find it. That it is my third great-grandparents' marriage record. In this video, I'm sharing with you why you might be missing your ancestors' marriage record and where you might want to look. If we haven't met before, I'm Lisa, and this YouTube channel is dedicated to helping you find your ancestors, grow that family tree, and not get overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, let's get started. As I start out to once again tackle my brick wall in genealogy, my third great-grandmother, Joanna Barrett, I can't help but wonder, what am I missing? What clue am I missing? Because I know I'm missing one. You know, I have that genealogy sense, that genealogy gut that kind of tells me you're missing something and you're missing something important. I just don't know what it is, but I have learned to listen to my genealogy gut. Okay, now I really have to ask, does anybody else have that kind of sixth sense when you're researching genealogy, that genealogy gut? If so, let me know down in the comments. I'd like to know. I'm not the only one. Okay, let's get back to marriage records. Now, as new genealogy researchers, if you are just starting out that genealogy research and finding your ancestors, we are told to find birth, marriage, and death records, right? And why is that? Well, because these records hold a lot of information about our ancestors in addition to the dates that we're seeking. But let's face it, they're not always easy to find, and marriage records, especially, I find, can be troublesome to find. But why is that? Well, the courthouse may have burned, or been flooded, or suffered at the hands of some other natural disaster that has destroyed many of its records. And marriage records, being county records, could have easily been lost in the process. Now, the destruction of a county's records is really tragic, and it's unfortunate, but to be honest, it happens probably more than we realize. I research a lot in southern states where I find a lot of burned counties. And well, when a record is destroyed, well, it's just gone. So do we have options as genealogy researchers when that loss has happened? Absolutely, we have options. The very first thing that I would encourage you to do is to check for the records anyway. Just because a courthouse has a significant record loss, go ahead and check and make sure. Oftentimes, not everything was destroyed, and it could be just a very small portion might still be available, might have survived. And if your ancestors are in that particular record that survived, then you're in good shape. Yes, the chances of finding the record that you need in a burned county are very slim, but don't chance missing that one surviving record that could help you because you didn't look. If the marriage records didn't survive at the courthouse, then you're going to want to take your search into the church records. So get out of the courthouse and turn your attention to start researching for records in the local churches. Now, perhaps your ancestors did not live quite so happily ever after and ended up in divorce. While tragic for the couple, it could generate extra records for you, the genealogy researcher. If it was early enough, you might find that those divorce records that contain your ancestors' information are actually at the state level, perhaps even at the state legislative level. Or perhaps your ancestors' divorce records survived, but the collection that contained the marriage records did not survive when a courthouse burned. So it gives you another opportunity to perhaps find evidence of that marriage date. Now, next up, you might be overlooking the ancestor's marriage record and not finding it because they crossed a border. It could be a county border, it could be a state border, it could be a country border. So don't always assume that the couple got married in the county where they live. There are a number of reasons that a couple might have crossed a border, be it county, state, or country, to get married. First and foremost, it may have just been easier to physically get to a courthouse in a neighboring county or a neighboring state compared to the courthouse at their own county. I have ancestors who lived in Surry County, North Carolina, and Surry County is a beautiful part of the North Carolina state, and it is up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, for some of my ancestors to get married or to go to the courthouse to get married, they would have had to cross a very large river. Now, if the spring rains had swollen the river, it really wasn't very safe or easy to get across that river into the courthouse. It was actually easier to get across the Virginia state line into the courthouse of the neighboring county there. And so indeed, that's where I started to find some ancestors' marriage records. So when you're considering if your ancestor crossed a county line, a state line, or a country's border, Put yourself in your ancestors' shoes and think, where would you have gotten married if you were that couple? Think about how far they would have had to travel to get married. Was it safe? What type of terrain? What type of weather could have impacted which way they would have gone? It might be easy in the spring to go one direction, while in the winter, the other direction. Was this marriage that you're looking at a break from tradition for that family? So maybe that couple was heading where they couldn't be found. Our ancestors did things for a reason, and uncovering those motives will help you find the records that you're looking for. Now, if you enjoy learning about your ancestors' marriage and love stories, be sure and hit that like button and let me know. As you consider where your ancestors potentially got married, I want you to think along these lines as well. They were in love, but maybe the family wasn't so happy about it, right? Maybe that couple, maybe your ancestors felt the only option they had was to elope and get married somewhere else. Yep, my great-grandfather broke his original engagement to marry a younger woman across the state line. I really wish I knew the rest of the story on why they did. But considering they're my great-grandparents, well, I'm glad they did. Now, a couple may have crossed a border to get married because marriage requirements in a different state may have been easier and less cumbersome for the couple. Age requirements, medical test, parental consent, these were all just some of the impediments that our ancestors could have faced at one time or another when it came to getting married. And so when they were facing difficult or impediments to getting married, what a couple needed and wanted was really just an easy way to get married. And that's how the industry of marriage mills came to be. Now, marriage mills are those places, those locations that couples would go to get married quickly. You might also have heard the term Gretna Greens. Gretna Green, Scotland, which is just across the border from England, became a popular destination in the 1750s for couples to go from England to get married. So marriage mills, or towns that are known as marriage mills, can sometimes be referred to as Gretna Greens. We see similar examples here in the US. Las Vegas is one such destination. Other examples include Dillon, South Carolina, where many couples from North Carolina crossed the border to get married. Niagara Falls, Ontario in Canada was a marriage mill destination for New York couples who wanted to get married. And New York was considered a marriage mill or a Gretna Green area for those coming from Canada. Other American city examples are St. Joseph's, Michigan, and Lake County, Illinois. Family Searches Wiki has a great article on Gretna Greens and marriage mills, and I'll have a link to that below in the description. Now, here's a tip. If you are struggling to find your ancestors' marriage record, where you think they got married, take a step back and research where couples from that area would have gone to get married. What was a common place, a common Gretna Green, local Gretna Green, so to speak, that they would have gotten married, and request a record search there. Now, it's not a guarantee you'll find their record there, but it is definitely a clue that you would want to follow up on. All right, now sometimes we've got to think about, why are we not finding an ancestor's marriage record? We got to talk about the elephant in the room. Maybe they didn't actually get married. Now, as genealogy researchers, we have to take our blinders off and we have to consider all possibilities. We have to consider that our ancestors never formally married. And if they didn't actually get married, well, no marriage and no record. But the couple could have lived together. People may have assumed they were married. They may have even had children, but still never got married. Sarah Talley Blanks, born about 1800 in Halifax County, Virginia, never actually married Langley Talbot, despite having an ongoing relationship with them and bearing children for over 50 years. Now, Sarah was a widow when she began her relationship with Langley Talbot, but Langley had gambling problems. She may have loved him, but she wasn't letting him get his hands on her money and her property. Now, in another scenario, maybe you have an ancestor who is widowed and has a young child, but you never can find a marriage record or who she was married to. Well, sometimes a woman chose to call herself a widow in a society that deemed it inappropriate to have had a child born out of wedlock. So these are just two possibilities, but we have to consider all possibilities when it comes to why we're not finding that ancestor's marriage record. Were they married? So love was and is a complicated issue, and not just for us, but for our ancestors as well. Family expectations, burned courthouses, and unconventional living arrangements make trying to find those marriage records difficult at times. Now, if you'd like to learn about searching for other vital records for your ancestors, such as that elusive birth certificate, be sure and watch the video on your screen now.